Have you ever truly wondered why the men who control immense wealth and wield genuine power are rarely the ones you see gracing magazine covers? They're never the ones paraded on glowing screens, nor are they begging for adulation from crowds that secretly envy them. Think of individuals like Robert Moses, who, for decades, single-handedly shaped the landscape of New York City, building bridges, parks, and highways. Yet, he never held an elected office and largely operated outside the direct glare of public scrutiny. Or Bernard Baruch, often called the Lone Wolf of Wall Street, a confidant to presidents and a key figure in American economic policy for half a century, whose influence was profound but rarely ostentatious. Every empire that rises loudly is eventually torn down just as loudly by the very eyes that once applauded it. Power, when it is genuine, has always understood a fundamental law that the poor often refuse to learn: that visibility is a liability, and attention is a tax. Those who stand perpetually in the light become targets long before they become legends. Because men do not destroy what they cannot see. They cannot steal what they cannot locate, and they cannot plot against what remains a rumor instead of a face. The masses are trained to believe that success must announce itself, that greatness must be witnessed, that wealth must sparkle in public to be real. Yet, this belief is a trap, subtly designed by those who already rule. Because the more visible you are, the more predictable you become. And the more predictable you are, the easier it is to neutralize you, to bleed you through taxation, regulation, envy, litigation, and social pressure. What once looked like a fortress slowly becomes a cage of expectations and obligations. You will find yourself working not for your own expansion, but for the comfort of those who watch you. Men do not hate power. They hate the sight of someone else holding it. This is why every celebrated tycoon eventually becomes a villain in the public imagination. The crowd forgives poverty, but never forgives dominance. Once you are seen as having more than your share, the knives begin to sharpen in the minds of bureaucrats, journalists, and even your own neighbors, who smile while secretly resenting your position. And resentment is always the seed of destruction. Those who feel smaller will always seek to pull down those who stand taller. A truly wise ruler, therefore, learns to wear masks, to let others take the stage while he holds the strings. He lets loud men fight for fleeting attention while he moves quietly behind the curtain, where real decisions are made. Because applause is not power, and recognition is not security. Every man who trades privacy for praise will eventually discover he has sold his freedom for a fleeting feeling of importance. Meanwhile, the invisible man accumulates leverage, information, and assets beyond the reach of the mob's gaze. This is why history is often written about kings and generals, but it is ultimately controlled by bankers, advisors, and silent families whose names never become common speech. The throne attracts arrows, but the treasury remains untouched when it is hidden in the shadows. The one who truly understands this does not rush to display his victories. He lets others believe they are winning while he counts what they cannot see. Appearances are for fools. Outcomes are for those who know how to wait. If you wish to become truly powerful, you must abandon the childish desire to be admired. Admiration is expensive. It demands explanation, justification, and eventually submission to the expectations of others. Invisibility, however, allows you to maneuver without resistance, to acquire without being noticed, to make moves before your rivals even realize you exist. This is the true advantage of the fox who slips past traps, not by brute strength, but by never stepping where the hunters are watching. People judge more by what they see than by what is. So, the art of becoming invisible is not about hiding in poverty, but about hiding in plain sight. It's about letting others underestimate you while you quietly build structures of wealth and influence that do not rely on their approval. Because the moment they begin to praise you is the moment they begin to claim you. And the moment they claim you is the moment you are no longer free to act according to necessity, but only according to their fragile sense of fairness that has never created anything except mediocrity and resentment. Once you are no longer free to act according to necessity, you become a servant of appearances, forced to maintain an image that no longer serves your true interests. The crowd does not love you for what you do, but for what you symbolize to their own aspirations. The moment you deviate from that illusion, they will turn on you with a fury that feels moral, but is nothing more than wounded expectation. Which is why the invisible man is always safer than the celebrated one. For he has no image to defend and no lie to maintain. Every system of power, whether political or financial, is built on surveillance and compliance. Consider the vast networks of government databases collecting everything from your financial transactions to your social media posts, or the ever-present gaze of CCTV cameras, now enhanced with facial recognition technology, tracking your movements in public spaces. The more visible you become, the more completely you are absorbed into these systems, tagged, categorized, regulated, taxed, and psychologically pressured into behaving in ways that make you predictable and therefore controllable. While the man who remains obscure slips through the cracks of bureaucracy, operating in the spaces where rules are weak and enforcement is blind, which is where true wealth is accumulated long before it is ever displayed. Understand this clearly. People do not rise by being virtuous. They rise by being useful, and they fall by being seen as a threat. So if you insist on broadcasting your success, you announce yourself as both a source of envy and a potential rival to those who already dominate the landscape. And rivals are never tolerated for long because power is not shared by those who possess it. It is defended, protected, and hoarded with the same instinct that guards territory in every predatory species. This is why the men who survive at the top are those who master perception, who allow others to believe they are smaller, weaker, or less important than they truly are. Because underestimated power is the most dangerous kind. And it is far easier to strike from the shadows than from a brightly lit stage where every move is watched, criticized, and anticipated by enemies who pretend to be admirers until the moment they find an opening. You must, therefore, learn to separate your true operations from your public identity. To let the world interact with a harmless mask while your real self negotiates, acquires, and consolidates in silence, because the mask absorbs the hatred, the scrutiny, and the distractions, while the hidden core remains focused on what matters, which is not being liked but being positioned, not being celebrated but being secured. The crowd believes that transparency is virtuous, yet transparency is nothing more than vulnerability dressed up as morality. Think of how corporations mine your online data, creating detailed profiles that predict your purchasing habits or even your political leanings. When everyone knows your moves, your assets, and your intentions, you have already surrendered the strategic advantage that allows you to act without interference. And interference is the true enemy of wealth, for it slows, complicates, and taxes every decision until opportunity slips away into the hands of those who were never foolish enough to announce themselves. You must become comfortable with being misunderstood, even dismissed, because obscurity grants you the freedom to operate beyond the reach of gossip, regulation, and social pressure. And it is in that freedom that fortunes are quietly built. Not through dramatic gestures, but through patient accumulation. Through deals no one hears about. Through positions no one notices until they have already matured into something too large to challenge. Without causing chaos, those who chase visibility believe that fame creates leverage. But fame only creates exposure. And exposure is the first step toward being controlled. Because once your name becomes a symbol, you no longer belong to yourself. You belong to the stories others tell about you. And stories are weapons used to manipulate behavior to force you into roles that serve the interests of those who spread them. While the invisible man remains immune to narratives, free to shift, adapt, and strike as necessity demands. Because necessity, not morality, is what governs every serious arena of wealth. And those who allow themselves to be bound by public expectations will always be outmaneuvered by those who recognize that rules are only rigid for those who are seen, while the unseen move fluidly between them, bending and exploiting every gap that visibility cannot protect. Which is why the most dangerous actors in any system are never the ones giving speeches, but the ones listening quietly and calculating. When you are invisible, you are not burdened by the need to explain yourself. An explanation is a form of surrender. The moment you deviate from that illusion, they will turn on you with a fury that feels moral, but is nothing more than wounded expectation. Which is why the invisible man is always safer than the celebrated one. For he has no image to defend and no lie to maintain. Every system of power, whether political or financial, is built on surveillance and compliance. Consider the vast networks of government databases collecting everything from your financial transactions to your social media posts, or the ever-present gaze of CCTV cameras, now enhanced with facial recognition technology, tracking your movements in public spaces. The more visible you become, the more completely you are absorbed into these systems, tagged, categorized, regulated, taxed, and psychologically pressured into behaving in ways that make you predictable and therefore controllable. Explanation is a weakness because it invites debate, and debate invites delay. Delay kills opportunity. The man who does not owe anyone an explanation can move with speed and decisiveness, acquiring assets, relationships, and positions long before the world realizes a shift has occurred. By then, it's too late to stop him without destroying themselves. People are conditioned to believe wealth comes from publicly displayed effort, from hustle that can be admired. Yet, in reality, wealth comes from control of flows no one sees, from ownership of systems rather than participation in them. And systems are built quietly through contracts, through leverage, through influence over decision makers who never appear on television because their power speaks for them in outcomes, not headlines. Consider how early industrial titans, not by grand public declarations, but through a labyrinth of contracts, shrewd acquisitions, and financial leverage, quietly consolidated entire industries. They secured control over essential resources, supply chains, and distribution networks, making their dominance an unassailable fact long before the public truly grasped the extent of their power. The more eyes on you, the more hands reach toward you, demanding a share, demanding compliance, demanding justification. Public success is often followed by public punishment. Societies tolerate inequality only when it's hidden. Flaunted, they seek to correct it through law, shame, and force. The invisible accumulates without provoking the instincts of redistribution that destroy the bold. Comparison breeds resentment, and resentment demands a target. So, if you wish to keep what you build, you must avoid becoming that target. Let others believe their lives are better than yours, or at least not threatened, while you quietly position yourself far beyond their reach. A prince who shows his treasury invites thieves. A man who displays his wealth invites predators of every kind, from tax collectors to litigators to false friends. The wise hide their riches, not from shame, but understanding how quickly they can be taken when known. Invisibility also grants you the power to observe without being observed, the foundation of all strategic advantage. You learn who is loyal, who is greedy, who is fearful, and who is ambitious before any of them have learned anything about you. Information is the most valuable currency in every market, yet it is only freely given to those who do not appear threatening. The underestimated man always knows more than the admired one. To be invisible is therefore not to be absent, but to be inscrutable. To exist without revealing your intentions, to move without announcing your destination, and to accumulate without displaying your progress. The world is not kind to those who stand out. It is only patient with those it does not notice. Patience is all a strategist needs to turn small advantages into overwhelming dominance. Dominance is never seized in a single dramatic moment, but assembled quietly through 1,000 small moves that no one bothers to track. Attention is always focused on spectacle, on crisis, on the loud collisions of egos and institutions. While the true shifts of power happen in silence, in boardrooms without cameras, in accounts without names, in agreements written in language too dull for the masses to read, but too precise for them to ever break. Those who announce their ambitions invite opposition because ambition is interpreted as aggression by anyone who might lose from your success. So, the wise do not declare their goals. They let their results appear long after the intentions that created them have been forgotten. Which is why the most successful fortunes look to the outside world as if they came from nowhere. Sudden and inexplicable, when in truth they were built patiently under the cover of obscurity. You must understand that the public sphere is not a marketplace of truth, but a battlefield of perception where every visible figure is either elevated or destroyed.